Is everybody on? Hmm?
Councilor Wilson is there.
Is she there?
Yeah, she is there. Video is off.
I'm here.
Okay.
Oh, I had my video on. Hi, everyone.
Hello. Okay,
Hello.
we're ready to go here? You ready? I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6:30. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none, adoption of agenda. Mover Counselor Neal, second Counselor Decker, that council approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor? Opposed, that is carried. Adoption of the minutes. Moved by Counselor Sentence, seconded by Counselor DeRose. Is Counselor DeRose there?
Sentence is not here.
Counselor Sentence is here.
Not here. Oh, now it just not here.
Is Counselor DeRose there? I don't see him. For the sake of the minutes, I'll get a seconder, Counselor Neal. That council approve the minutes as presented. All those in favor? Opposed, that is carried. Mayor's report. The City of Thorold, in conjunction with the Thorold Public Library, will open a warming station from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. whenever there is a cold weather alert in effect at the Thorold Public Library. The library will be used solely as a place for residents to escape the cold. Entry to the library will be permitted under strict guidelines. Physical distancing must be maintained and hand sanitizer will be available to stop the spread of COVID-19. Please visit www.thorold.ca for updates or changes. Winter parking, friendly reminder. Vehicles parked on the roadway prevent winter maintenance crews from clearing the roadway of snow in a timely and efficient manner. When a snowplow is forced to go around a parked vehicle, it leaves an embankment of snow which creates difficulty for other drivers and allows for a buildup of snow to occur on the roadway. Let's do our part to keep the roads clear and safe for everyone. Please remember, during snow clearing events, you are able to park on your apron until which time the plow has cleared your road. Then your vehicle must return to the road for parking. As always, our Public Works Department does an outstanding job during these snow clearing events, with the current one being the largest we and the entire region have experienced since the blizzard of '77. Share the Road Cycling Coalition recently renewed the City of Thorold's bronze status as a bicycle-friendly community. This lengthy application and process took 4 years of hard work and set the groundwork towards silver in 4 years' time when we reapply for certification. Thank you to city staff, Sean Dunsmore, Karen Ohm, Thorold Active Transportation Advisory Committee, Committee Chair Mary Claire Cavison, Council Representative Councillor DeRose, and all those who worked hard on this successful application. On Wednesday, January 5th, the City of Thorold raised the Crime Stoppers flag at City Hall in support of Crime Stoppers Month. January is Crime Stoppers Month. Crime Stoppers Niagara is a citizen, media, and police cooperative program designed to involve the community in the fight against crime. Throughout 2022, the Niagara Crime Stoppers program will target specific areas that have impacted the communities of the region for years. They are raising awareness of human trafficking, a campaign against retail theft, shoplifting, and highlighting concerns related to elder abuse by partnering with the Niagara Elder Abuse Prevention Network. Through this unique partnership of police, media, community, and you, we can all help maintain and improve the quality of life within Niagara region. We thank everyone for their continued efforts. On Friday, January 7th, I attended the virtual public health COVID-19 status update with Dr. Hergy, Acting Medical Officer of Health and Commissioner. Also providing updates were Dr. David Deck, Chair of the Region's Vaccine Task Force, Kevin Smith, Chief of Niagara EMS, Lynn Guerrero, President and CEO of Niagara Health System, and Ron Tripp, CAO of the Niagara region. This was a very good meeting highlighting the challenges our healthcare system is experiencing due to the Omicron variant. On Thursday, January 13th, CAO Manoj Dalwaria, Economic Development Manager Marco Marino, and I attended the virtual funding announcement for Nordgen Biotech. The Provincial Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade hosted this event, with Minister Vic Fideli announcing $1 million in funding from the Ontario Together Fund to Nordgen Biotech to help support their $13 million expansion, which will allow them to scale up their production. This investment will allow them to produce 100,000 COVID-19 saliva-based test kits per day. Dr. Yusuf Hajamad, founder, president, and CEO of Nordgen Biotech, stated, "This program has, without a doubt, helped Nordgen Biotech and many other Ontario companies overcome the challenges faced as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. The program encouraged Nordgen to undertake a broad facility expansion, a scaling up of operations, and creating new jobs to meet the demand for Nordgen's products during the pandemic. This investment, combined with Nordgen's, is expected to create an additional 105 jobs. Great news not only for the City of Thorold, but the entire Niagara region." On behalf of City Council, congratulations goes out to Pamela Mins, who was appointed to the Order of Canada, which was announced on December 29th, 2021. I called Pamela to personally congratulate her on behalf of City Council and the residents of the City of Thorold, and she sent me this short note. "Hello, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your phone call about the Order of Canada. It was an honor and complete surprise, since the 30 years I spent working on heritage preservation was so rewarding and enjoyable. Heritage gave the citizens of Thorold and its visitors a new pride in the city. You have done an outstanding job in the downtown area, which makes it appealing to not only those who live there, but to tourists. I miss doing the work, but it is in the hands of others now, and it will move ahead and keep Thorold on top of the list in the region of Niagara. All the best to our city and hopes for good years ahead. I have enjoyed my relationship with you and our council over the years. Pamela Mins." Today, I attended a virtual information session hosted by the Ontario Ministry of Infrastructure about the government's plan to bring high-speed internet to all communities in Ontario by the end of 2025, and included an update from the Minister of Infrastructure, the Honourable Kinga Surma, and about the Ontario Connects plan, and a presentation by Ministry of Infrastructure officials. As the Niagara region goes through the official plan process, the draft Consolidated Niagara Official Plan is available for review and input on the Niagara Region website under Niagara Official Plan, Draft Official Plan. As well, there will be 3 virtual open houses, which will all begin at 6:30 p.m. The first one, January 26th, you can register for an open house on settlement area boundary expansions. The second one, February 10th, is you can register for the open house on the natural environment system. And the final one, on February 24th, you can register for the open house on the draft Consolidated Niagara Official Plan. Please get involved and provide your input. There will be 2 additional GoVax vaccination clinics at Holy Rosary Parish Hall on Thursday, January 20th and Friday, January 21st. These clinics will run from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and are pop-up walk-in style clinics. Important information regarding these clinics: anyone under 30 years of age will receive the Pfizer vaccine. Those 30 years of age and older will receive the Moderna vaccine. This information has been posted on the city Facebook page. Also, please check the Ontario online vaccine portal regularly, as the Niagara Region Public Health continually adds new appointment dates. All the necessary links and additional information can be found on the Niagara Region website under COVID-19 and Public Health. Ontario Premier Doug Ford says the province is set to make an announcement later this week about reducing COVID-19 restrictions. So stay tuned for that announcement. We're not sure exactly what day and what time, but it just said it'll be later this week. In closing, please continue to follow all public health safety measures. These measures are extremely important to follow, especially during the highly contagious Omicron variant wave. Also, continue to support our frontline workers as well as our local businesses who have been severely impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic and need our support now more than ever. And that's the end of my mayor's report. Up next is presentations, and we have Bill Vanderklip from the Thorold Housing presentation, Affordable Housing Need in Thorold. And Bill, are you there? Yes, you are.
I am here, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. And thank you, councilors, for your attention this evening. I'm going to share my screen. Oops, can I have that, Joanne? Or my nose, whoever gives me the sharing.
Share it.
You can just hit share screen.
Just hit
on
share
your
screen.
computer.
It says that's disabled for me, so
It shouldn't be. Let me take a look.
I've got a note that pops up on my screen. I'm sorry about that, but it says host has disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, I don't know why, because he is a panelist. And I don't have an option to ask him.
Okay, well, it's unfortunate, because that's kind of key to my presentation, so.
Just give me a second here. Is it on the agenda, Joanne? Do you know? It is? I'm gonna pull it up.
One sec, Bill. We're working on
Technology's
it.
wonderful, right?
Oh, I'm just going to the agenda.
There we go. I've got it. Thank you. I'm gonna minimize this. Share.
Here we go, Bill.
You got me now?
We got you.
Okay. Now I just want to.
And Bill, you know you have 10 minutes.
Yeah, I'm going to try to keep it to the 10 minutes in respect of your time. So again, I'm presenting on behalf of the Thorold Housing Group. It's a small group, and the entire group consists of myself, Councillor Fred Neal as the council representative. We have Terrence Skilstra from downtown Thorold, and Gary Ford, and then Lori Beach from Bethlehem Housing Service is active on our committee as well. We're a subcommittee that reports to One Thorold, and I expect that most of the councillors are familiar with One Thorold, which is a grouping of business leaders and other interested key leaders of the community who have been meeting over the last number of years to highlight needs in the city and address some of those needs. So we're dealing with the issue of housing, and I just thought I'm going to just beg your indulgence. I know I've presented this last year at my presentation, but so many things come across your desks and you see so many different things. So I'm just going to take a minute or two to remind you of why we are looking at housing needs. This is a result of a region-wide study that was done a number of years back, so the data is a little bit dated, but when they did the study, they indicated that even by the time they published the results, that the Niagara region was an area where housing needs requirements were not diminishing, they were actually increasing year by year. So they're dealing with core housing need, and the definition is highlighted there, is a household is said to be in core housing need if its housing falls below at least one of the adequacy, affordability, or suitability standards, and it would have to spend 30% more or more of its total before tax income in rent. So there's the key definitions in terms of housing needs, core housing needs: adequacy, affordability, or suitability. Across the region of Niagara, 13.3% of households are deemed to be in core housing need. And again, just to highlight the three areas of definition of housing needs: suitability, housing that's too small; adequacy, housing that needs significant repair; affordability, 30% of income going towards the housing needs. And you can see that 95% of the households that are in core housing need in Niagara have the affordability, fall within the affordability group. I just wanted to highlight that Thorold is one of the communities obviously of Niagara, and we're right at the region average of about 13% of core housing needs, and you can see that the needs are comprised of renters and owners. That number for Thorold there, you see the number highlighted there, is around 970 households. When this data was assembled, as I said, it's a few years back, and I would expect that that number is actually higher at this point. You can see some of the bigger communities have bigger numbers, but I think it's significant for us to realize that at least 1,000 households in Thorold are deemed to be in housing need. And in terms of the housing needs in Thorold, you can see in terms of we said that the greatest need was in terms of the affordable housing, and you see that though the numbers for anybody earning less than roughly $40,000 a year, that's where our needs lie. 200 for that. For the less than 30,000, 259. Less than 20,000, 19,500 is 496 households that are deemed to be in core housing need. Again, that's housing spending more than 30% of their total gross income on their housing. And you can see with the little graphic beside there that single or roommate households are the biggest single group, but then lone parents are also a significant number of people in Thorold that need more housing. So that's the reason for our group approaching this. And for myself, you know, we've had a number of cold spells that we've experienced here in Thorold, and now we've had this major dump of snow. And I think of people in poor housing situations, even some people on the streets or homeless. These kinds of situations really make me feel that as a community we need to respond. There are people who are hurting and in need. So the housing group, our mandate then is to seek the provision of housing to the homeless, to single parent families who have no housing under a housing first model. And that housing first model is something that's been in the news quite a bit, so I'm not going to spend time developing that, but the concept is provide housing without having requirements for the people to make changes in their lifestyle. Provide them housing and give them a firm foundation to make other changes. And we want to provide housing that has additional supports on site, and the intention is that there would be a community or family environment there, so there's mutual accountability and support from one person to the next. And then in order to do that, we would work with local partners and government to ensure and provide housing to lower income earners who can't afford homes, and who can't afford homes because they're in competition with student housing and the influx of home buyers from higher value areas who come with, they've sold or they've got funding from this other area, and they've increased the value of home purchases. So the Thorold Housing Group, since we last spoke to you, we've held regular meetings, we've refined our vision, we're planning next steps. And our areas of focus are to seek a development partner, and I'll touch on that in the next slide. We hope to locate a suitable property, and that will close my presentation to you. And we're doing tonight, and we've been in conversation with others, we hope to keep all parties informed. So our housing group then has developed a relationship with Bethlehem Housing Support Services, because if we get a housing project on the go, they're the people with the expertise and they align very nicely with our goals of community-based housing with supports on site, and they have some excellent homes in St. Catharines, and they are willing and have indicated a real support for what we're doing. And we've had conversations with Rankin Construction, who haven't, we don't have any formal agreements with them, but they have definitely indicated an interest in working with us on an affordable housing project. They're well known and respected in the Niagara region and have a lot of resources that they can benefit what we are trying to do. So the property that we are looking at is down the end of St. David's Road, where it meets Chapel Street, Wellington Street there. There is a property there, I think Public Works used to have a little bit of a yard in there. Telecom is now in one of the buildings there. But you can see it's kind of green space inside this yellow circle. You can see the canal running next to it. We think it's an excellent location. It's a few blocks of a walk to Tim Hortons, and a block or two more, and you're in downtown at the Pine Street Plaza. It's accessible for people to a lot of things, and it's a city-owned property. We expect there will be some costs in terms of getting it suitable for this development, but this is a property that in our discussions just seems suitable for our purposes. It's large enough, which this next slide shows that Marco helped us with. You can see the property is about 4 acres down there in the blue, in the light blue, and if we get a unit up there, we will have probably a little bit of green space around it, some parking area, and we're hoping for 50 plus units that we could develop in that area in some kind of an apartment style building. We do have to provide some office space for some of these support services as well, which we mentioned. We would like to have supports on site for these people so that they can. So our request then to you as councillors, to the city, the leaders of our community, is that this city-owned property off of St. David's Road East be allocated for development as a housing project for those in the Thorold community with housing needs underneath those guidelines of adequate, affordable, or suitable housing. So that's our request, that council would allocate this property for that development, that the city would complete the necessary environmental studies and assessments on the property to allow this to occur, and that's one of the areas of expertise that Rankin has mentioned to us that they have developed over the last number of years. They have their own engineering crew and their own equipment to do that. So that's hopefully a way that if the city agrees to this, Rankin will be able to facilitate that process. And further, that as we continue to work on acquiring this property, that the city assist in whatever means it can to reduce the expense. Lori Beach keeps pointing out to us that these housing projects only work if we can keep the costs to a point that these potential tenants can live with. And the Central Mortgage and Housing of Canada, again, has guidelines for that. And if the building costs get too high, we will not be eligible for grants from them either. So we're making this request from the city because if this property is allocated and dedicated to this, it allows us to make the next steps of going to seek funding, to seek funding partners, to deal with getting grants and a whole number of other things that are the next stages. But we can't proceed to any of those stages if we don't have a property that we can focus on. So that kind of summarizes my presentation. I'm not sure how much more time I have left, Mr. Mayor. If there's a question or two, I am here.
No, your time's up, but we can open the floor for questions. So I have questions. I got Councillor Sentence up first.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Bill. Great presentation as usual. it seems a little bit closer to reality than every time we talk to you, so I'm excited about that. I guess a question, we got to go through some steps here, but so Bethlehem Housing who would run this? And the reason I ask that is we don't want it to become student housing or a project. Like, there would be people that would run it and would put people who really need the homes in there. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, there's two basic scenarios that we're dealing with. One is that whoever develops this property maintains ownership, but then would, in the agreement, in the run-up to the housing unit being completed, there would be an agreement that there's a long-term lease, 30, 40 years or whatever, to Bethlehem Housing Services to run this project. They've got the expertise, they've got the staff, they've got the management abilities to deal with these tenants, because a regular landlord just will not have the patience or the time to do so. The other is that some developer develops the property. It's a turnkey operation. When the property is ready for occupancy, it's handed over or sold or whatever. However, that's where it's not really a handover, because it wouldn't be for free, but it's sold to Bethlehem. But again, the idea is that when it's sold, it's over a long-term haul, so that the developer actually gets their investment back, but not immediately.
Okay, I just want to make sure there's steps in there that homes go to people who need them, affordable, and it just doesn't turn into, another student housing area problem or problem area like that. So thank you for the presentation.
Okay.
Councillor Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Bill, what role was it you were saying Rankin would have in this? Just only bring that up is because if it's to deal with a business, there may be a procurement policy issue. I just want a clarification on that. See, because if it's something that the city is going to be involved in and there's a financial gain to be made by somebody over a certain dollar figure, we have to put it out to all to tender on.
Yeah, no, we don't want that approach, Councillor Handley. Rankin at this point in time has offered their services for helping with the environmental assessment. We would have to go to the next stage of seeing if they're actually a development partner. But again, the idea is not that they own the property, that it becomes there, that this is property dedicated solely to the purposes of providing affordable housing.
Okay, if I could ask another question, Mr.
Yeah,
Mayor,
go
through
ahead.
you,
Go ahead.
and you could forward it to the appropriate staff member. In regards to an environmental assessment, have we ever done one ourselves, or it was always the request of any proponents that were wanting to purchase the property to do the environmental assessment?
I'll ask our CAO to comment on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Handley, a number of years back, city has done an assessment. Because of the dynamic nature of the property, I don't know at this point in time what is the level of contamination there. In order for us to have an up-to-date information, city has to incur additional funds to have more soil samples taken to ensure, to actually assess what is the damage, what is the contamination, and so we don't have the up-to-date information at this point in time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. If I could then just to elaborate on that, if any information that we do have as what the previous samples were, could that be, because this isn't going to be a decision tonight, could that information be given to council so the council can see? Because I know with Lamco diecast being there and Interlake Steel in the ditch area, there was some zinc contamination and that stuff at one time. Or just because I'm wanting this to come to fruition, that's why I'm just asking that, so to get an insight of what we may be dealing with.
Sounds, Councillor Hanley, you want to comment on that and about the report and whatever information is available?
Whatever information is there with us, certainly, of course, we can share it with council. And additionally, if depending on the direction of council, staff can put together a report and bring it back to council for them to make a decision appropriately. And I know that you did mention about the procurement policies and all those things, so the staff report can bring the process, what is required, and we need to be open and transparent. And that can all come in a staff report back to council for them to make informed decision. Thank you.
Okay,
Just
go ahead, Bill.
Just a cautionary note, if I might. if this goes to something like public tender, it's just going to make the property value, raise it to such a high level that this will not be suitable for an affordable housing project. This has to be property that, you know, the city will take responsibility for assuring that it gets cleaned up environmentally. Rankin has given us a verbal commitment that they will facilitate and assist with that process. They've got the technology, they've got the personnel, and they will try to make that as reasonable as possible. But it has to stay totally dedicated to affordable housing.
I appreciate that, Bill. That's what I want to. Believe me, that I do know of a project that Rankin is doing that relates to something like that, where they're owning it privately, whatever. But anyways, I appreciate that. I have no other questions, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hanley. I got Councillor DeRose and then Councillor Wilson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Bill. And I just wanted to thank you for what you and your wife and some of your helpers do for our community. I appreciate it. Whatever help council can give, I'm sure we will. And keep up the great work giving back to our community. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Bill, I was just curious to know, are you asking that the city give this property to the project or maintain ownership of the property?
Well, that would be our best case scenario, that you would give the city for that purpose. If something else has to be worked out, we would have to go through the steps and see how that factors down the line to the cost of developing the property and whether that would still fall within the grant guidelines from CMHC. But the best case scenario is that this property, which I understand has been sitting around in city hands for many, many years, would be, given to this development.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any further questions? Because Councillor Neal, go ahead, Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the presenter. Mr. Vanderkleep, can you explain, has there been any conversation with Niagara Regional Housing regarding this? Does Bethlehem work in conjunction with Niagara Regional Housing, or is there...
All that information I presented at the beginning came from Niagara Regional Housing. We've had a conversation with Mr. Sinclair from Niagara Regional Housing, and Lori Beach, who's on our committee, has regular connection with them. Our committee has, other than having that one presentation from Mr. Sinclair, has not had ongoing connection, but as the process goes on, we definitely will be in the loop with them, because I think the region is really pushing for this type of development.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we need to get as many people on board who can move a project like this forward, and I would certainly support it if we could work it out. So I'm just wondering, through you, Mr. Mayor, what is it you're looking from us tonight? We obviously can't make a decision on disposing of land, even in an open meeting. We're not allowed to, I don't believe. But are you looking for our staff to come back with a report to council with more information?
I believe Councillor Neal has a motion to that effect.
Yes, Councillor Longo, I have a motion to that effect after everybody has their input into this evening's.
I'll leave it up to you then. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any further questions for Bill before we turn it over to Councillor Neal for a motion? Seeing none, Bill, as always, it's a pleasure to have you here, and thank you for an excellent presentation.
Well, I thank you all for the listening ear and, the sense I get that you all favor caring for the needs of our community. I think that's one of the strong points of Thorold. We are a caring community. We know one another, and we work together.
Thank you. Now I'm going to, there's a motion, Councillor Neal, that you want to bring forward. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I'd just like to thank the One Thorold Group and the subcommittee, the Housing Committee. They've been working at this for the last 2 or 3 years, and having Tom Rankin and company involved with this is going to be very positive moving forward. But my motion is that council requests the Director of Planning and Development Services to report back to council on a recommendation submitted by one Thorold Housing Committee, and it was seconded by Councilor Sentence, because Councilor Kenny isn't here tonight.
Okay, so I have in here that council received the presentation from One Thorold Housing Committee and then the motion that you stated. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, is there anyone that wants to speak to that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, that is carried. Okay. Thank you very much once again, Bill, and thank you, Councilor Neal. And Councilor Neal also sits on that committee as well, and has done a lot of work on with that group. Okay. Now we're going to move on to motions for council support, Char Technologies, and I have Councilor DeRose, a mover, and a seconder, Councilor Sentence. Go ahead, Councilor DeRose.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. We received a lot of contacts in regards to Chart Technologies in their original presentation. So I want to kind of slow things down, and I'm asking, and here's what I'm asking council. I'm looking for support of my fellow councilors. Whereas council requested a reconsideration of the resolution endorsed at the December 7th, 2021 regular meeting of council through report CAO 2021-09, endorsement of Char Technologies, that the proposal from Char Technologies Limited respecting their Thorold biomass pyrolysis project biomass to renewable natural gas and biocarbon be considered only following review by a professional environmental expert's opinion from the region of Niagara, and that the Planning and Development Services of the City of Thorold report back to council with input and concerns raised by the community following public meetings, and that council only consider a resolution of support following the above noted requirements, and that the City of Thorold has no obligation for funding relating to this project.
And that's a mover, Councilor DeRose, and a seconder, Councilor Sentence. Okay, speakers to the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, that is carried. Thank you, Councilor DeRose. Motion to receive and file minutes or adopt recommendations of council committees and boards. I have a mover, Councilor Wilson, and a seconder, Councilor Longo, that council receive and file the minutes below as presented. We have 12A1, Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee, 12A2, Committee of Adjustment, 12A3, Darlene Ryan Port Robinson Community Center, 12A4, Thorold Runway of Recognition. Is there any errors or omissions, or anyone on the committee want to speak to any of those? Go ahead, Councilor DeRose.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make at the next several meetings, I just wanted to, our chair of our committee, Councilor Whalen, asked if I could just bring up that we're accepting applications now for the runway of recognition. We're planning on a June get-together, celebration, award night. And so up until around the middle of March, we're going to be accepting applications. So if you have someone you want to nominate, apparently it can't be someone nominating themselves, but it's someone that can share some of their history. We'd appreciate going to the city website and sending an application. And so we've got, once again, a good group of people to select from. And I just wanted to be able to do that the next few meetings, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Yeah, by all means, Councilor DeRose. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed, that is carried. Minutes to endorse recommendations, 12B1H Friendly Committee Resolution, moved by Councilor Neal and seconded by Councilor Sentence, that the Age Friendly Committee move $4,800 allocated for Age Friendly Committee 2023 calendars from the 2021 committee budget to the 2022 committee budget. Does anyone want to speak to that? Or Councilor Neal, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, it's just for move, we have monies that are for the calendar for 2022. And the monies are in the city's hands. And just like to make sure that they're moved forward to 2022 in order to pay for the calendar project.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak to that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, that is carried. Age-friendly committee resolution, 12B2, moved by Councillor Neal, seconded by Councillor Longo, that the age-friendly committee carry over $500 from 2021 committee budget to the 2022 committee budget. Councillor Neal, did you want to speak on that one?
It's a similar situation, only it's a specific amount for the calendar purpose.
Okay. Anyone else? All those in favor? Opposed, that is carried. Statement by councilors. Up first, I have Councillor Neal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I've thought about this for a while, and what I would like to see happen as council deal with the old James White Arena and property, and see what we would like to see happen with that particular property. My own thoughts are that I would like to see it have the first floor as a dry floor recreational complex, but the above it, I would like to see 5, 6, or 7 stories of affordable housing, but that's my own input so far on it. But what I would like to see happen is the council send it to staff to bring back a recommendation on how to move forward with the James White Arena. And so I have a motion that I would like to see that
You want,
I have a motion here, Mr. Mayor,
go ahead.
that council requests the Director of Public Works and Community Services to prepare a report for the next council meeting on strategies moving forward to discuss the use of the old James White Arena.
Is that doable for the Director of Public Works and Community Services? Is Jeff here? Is that timeline too short? Where is Jeff? Because is that?
Well, I see what you mean, Mr. Mayor. It is only 2 weeks away.
Yeah.
By the end of April.
End of April, good. Is that okay, Jeff? Okay, that's good. So we'll change that in the motion to, by no later than the end of April. Okay? Go ahead, Councillor Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had a previous report on the integrity of the building and an engineer's report. Can we have that part of it also?
Yes,
Because-
the
please?
Director of Public Works and Community Services is nodding his head, so we'll include that as well, Councillor Hanley.
Thank you.
Councillor Decker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Neal. I agree with those sentiments. I'd love to see a dry floor rec complex on that side of the arena. I know there's a lot of people and that would love to use that for volleyball, basketball, and for lacrosse. So that's a great idea, and I fully support that. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor DeRose.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. As much as we are asking now for more space for floor sports after investing in such a huge investment with the Canada Summer Games build, my question is just to Jeff. Jeff, can you include any financial numbers to go along with your report? In other words, whether it's going to be financially feasible. That thing was supposed to be apparently in a few years torn down. So I don't know why we're trying to put Band-Aids on something that's, I like Fred's ideal of putting affordable housing, but I would do it and just tear the place down. I don't see the need for floor space for sports at this point with what we've got going. And so Jeff, are you able to give us some numbers with that report? Thank you.
Councillor, it's a report coming back from staff, so Jeff, how wholesome the report will be. Did you want to comment on that, Jeff?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to say that we'll share as much information as we have available on the condition of the existing structure, and then potential uses based on what we need. We have a number of special interest groups that are looking for some space as well. And I think it might make sense to incorporate that all into the same report. The amount of detail will really be dependent on what comes out of any type of brainstorming workshop and the feedback we get from the public. So we may not have firm numbers, but at least we'll be able to map out a course of action and, for further conversation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor DeRose?
Yeah, I would love a cost benefit analysis, but I know at this point it's not necessary. But yeah, we have to look at the numbers. We've got a lot of deferrals that we have to bring forward, and we can't just keep throwing money at an old arena. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sentence?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just throw my 2 cents in here too. I agree with everything that's said. We got to look at everything and see what uses can be in there. And we're also looking for a spot for our Thorold Museum. So that might be a potential landing spot for them to store or to display the Thorold history. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Neal, you had your hand up again, and then...
Just to reply to Councillor DeRose, I think we're all going to have our own take on what is going to happen. My thoughts is to sell the rights above the first floor. So the funds that may come from a developer that we would like to see affordable housing done above. That's my own take on it. It could be a few $1 million. Who knows? I don't know what that total property, because it includes the parking lot too, not just the building itself. Or could. So I think this is why I would like to see us have a good full discussion on all the different ways that we might want to utilize that particular piece of property. And you've all had a couple of good comments tonight on it. But I think we need the staff to come back with some information as a couple of councilors have asked for. And we'll make a good complex, whatever it becomes, out of that particular old arena.
Thank you, Councillor Neal. I seen Councillor Longo, you had your hand up before. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I struggle with any more dry floor space for sports. I'm sure council knows we have a building that's opening very soon. It's got 4 gymnasiums in it, 2 arenas, which will be lacrosse arenas in the summertime. And again, I'll say this 1,000 times if I need to. If we turn this into more dry floor space, we're only going to hurt ourselves at the new building that we're responsible to rent for the next 38 years. So I have no problem if having staff look into uses for the building. We had somebody 10 minutes ago ask about affordable housing land. That should have come up in that discussion. Here's more land that we could use for affordable housing. But, and maybe a museum, Councillor Sentence, that would be great. Other user groups that need space, but certainly not from a sports perspective. I think we've got a big rental issue that we have to deal with up the road, and I'll continue to say that. So I'll be happy to support having staff look at this, but I won't support, well, I'll try to keep an open mind, but you're going to have to really sell me hard on needing more dry floor space. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And I think that the whole idea is just to get a report and start a discussion. It's not to make any decisions in the short term. Am I correct, Councillor Neal? Okay. Okay. So
yeah, that's correct. We'll discuss this fully, as Councillor Longo was just trying to do there, and see what we can come up with.
Thank you, Councillor Hanley.
No, just to echo, like in Council Long, just to add on to it, we do have to take into consideration also too that we can't be going into competition with ourselves because we have a facility, as we know, the Candy Games facility, we're going to have to pay for floor space. So I can't see us paying, whether regardless if someone uses or not, say a set amount of $125 an hour, and then rent a dry floor space downtown for $40 an hour. That economically wouldn't make sense. So I'll look at it too, but we got to take into consideration here. either way, we're paying for dry floor space. So we need, I think, to look at the dry floor space we presently have.
Thank you.
But I'll have an open mind also.
Anyone else? Seeing none. That was a mover, Counselor Neal, and a seconder, Counselor Sentence. All those in favor? Opposed, that's carried. Up next, Counselor Longo, Canada Summer Games Facility. Go ahead, Counselor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm probably just going to make a statement here, but councilors are not going to bring a motion forward. And I'm not going to ask staff any questions because I know I'm not allowed to regarding the facility. Also, I have an issue because it's not an issue. It's not his fault, but Councillor Kenny's not here tonight, and I was going to direct some questions to him. I'll give a bit of history to my statement here. In November of 2021, we had a meeting and Councillor Kenny said if we had any questions regarding our new Canada Games facility, rental facility, that I could send them to him. So I did that. He was kind enough to acknowledge he received it. There were quite a number of questions. There were 70 questions. 70 questions, some that came from me, some that came from members of the public. People want to know what's going on with this facility. I gave him a month and I sent another email to him just before Christmas and he said, okay. And it's another month almost later and I have no response to my 70 questions. Nobody's going to answer them tonight because I don't want staff to. Councillor Kenny's not here to answer any, but I have 70 outstanding questions regarding a rental facility that's going to have, just to remind people, 4 gymnasiums, 2 arenas, lacrosse arenas for the summertime, which we need to rent because we have to pay for our rental up front, whether we use it or not. So I think that needs to be our focus. But until I can get answers to my 70 questions, I'm not sure where to go. I don't even know when this place opens. No offense to anybody, but I walk by there a couple times a week and there's nobody working in that place. It looks like it's finished to me, yet the city of Thorold and its residents have no idea what we have, when we can go in, how we're going to use it, who the operator is. So that's my statement. There's no motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If anybody has a question, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Councillor Longo. Do you want to comment, Manoj? Or CAO about the information? And when
Mr. Mayor, staff don't want to talk about the Canada Games, and I'm not being a smart aleck like last time. I don't want to put staff on the spot. I asked our negotiator, Councillor Kenny, 70 questions, and I have no answers. So I'll send him another email and hopefully he can get back to me with the answers.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Longo. Okay. And that's that. So we'll move on now to delegations to report. Up first, I have Michael Larkin of Larkin Land Use Planners Incorporated and Cosmopolitan Association Incorporated. And this is the presentation on the cemetery service delivery review. And Michael, are you there? Is Michael there? Okay.
Hi, I'm here with Mike. I'm just trying to contact him, make sure he's
And
connection.
your first
He was
name
here a
is?
second ago. There he is.
Okay, there's Michael.
Okay, pardon me, Mr. Mayor, a little mental blurb here. Thank you. Am I able to share my screen?
You should be able to.
Hey, Sal, can you bring me a pair of those headsets down the?
Okay, 1 second.
Jim, Councillor Hanley, your mic's on. You might want to shut your mic off.
I just realized that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So I'm just going to, there we go. Okay, can you see the slide, Mr. Mayor?
No, not yet. Does he have share screen?
Try this.
There we go. You're up now, Michael.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for the little technical glitch there. Mr. Mayor, for the record, my name is Michael Larkin of the firm Larkin Plus Land Planning Consultants, Inc. I have with me tonight Mr. Cosmo Casal of Cosmopolitan Associates. And together, Mr. Mayor, we've undertaken the cemetery service delivery review for the city's Lakeview Cemetery. Our final report has been provided to the city. Our purpose tonight is to provide council and the public with a high-level overview of the report and our analysis, leading to a series of recommendations for the city to consider. Following our presentation, we are available to answer any questions regarding the report and presentation that you may have. And here we go. So, Mr. Mayor, if I may, the report and our presentation takes a slightly different approach to the review. Our presentation generally follows the order that the key deliverables were articulated in the request for proposals. And we have purposely done this to be easily relatable to the deliverables identified in the RFP. The report, on the other hand, follows a sequential order to provide a basis for the responses to the RFP deliverables. For example, in order to determine services the city should target over the next 10 years, it was first necessary to understand the current status of the delivery of services at Lakeview, what product offerings there are, and what capacity exists within the cemetery, which will influence the options ultimately available to the city to consider when moving forward. The review of the services the city should target over the next 10 years was undertaken through consultation with a number of local funeral homes. Results of the investigation confirm the following. There is a need for a new mausoleum. Currently, there is limited supply of niche and crypt space within the existing mausoleum. However, demand for such space appears to be high. There is little demand for scattering gardens at Lakeview. Rather, there is a pressing need for new and additional cremation, burial options and offerings. This includes cremation gardens, columbaria, and niche structures. Interestingly, dispositions at Lakeview appear to be contrary with industry trends. At Lakeview, it appears that cremations amount for roughly 40% of the burial options, whereas the industry and market trend for cremations is 60%. Or more. This, Mr. Mayor, is likely due to limited product offerings at Lakeview to support cremation burials. Cosmo?
Thank you. The staffing organizational chart that we show in our study, we provide some organizational structure information. But the ultimate organizational structure and staffing requirements at Lakeview will depend on the business model that the city chooses from one of the models that we recommend. From the models outlined in the report, a recommendation is made to go with the model that provides sustainability for the property. Thank you, Mike. From our research, we also looked at some of the selected or noted amenities that were asked those, such as chapels or banquet halls, or indoor and outdoor amenities. From our research and interviews, we've noted that these facilities were not in demand, and we're not at this time recommending these facilities for Lakeview.
So, Mr. Mayor, our team believes that they're a critical component of the analysis, as any assessment of service delivery potential requires an understanding of the capacity potentially available at Lakeview. The RFP identified a requirement for the preparation of a conceptual cemetery master plan. The preparation of a CMP included an analysis of the existing cemetery with an understanding of the current necessity to reserve sufficient burial garden space to accommodate the potential transfer of graves from the old Lakeview Cemetery. A number of concepts were reviewed in our analysis to support the development of the CMP, including a discussion of the concept of pre- and at-need sales, the identification of capacities within the existing burial gardens, demographics and burial trends, and the burial and sales activity at Lakeview, which average about 108 dispositions annually. So the cemetery master plan is depicted in this slide. Essentially, it represents an extension of the burial garden design now present at the cemetery, reflecting old Lakeview. Through the proposed development of 2 new gardens to the north, which is the top of the plan, identified as gardens X and Y. The key difference in the gardens is that they reflect current and modern garden design philosophy. As noted, the CMP is designed to be flexible so that Lakeview can respond to changing and evolving trends in burial trends. There is sufficient opportunity for the development of dedicated cremation gardens and opportunities to accommodate a wide selection of burial offerings and products. The design exercise identified significant opportunities to assist the transformation of Lakeview into a cemetery that provides a full range of burial offerings and opportunities demanded by today's clientele. Approximately 53% of the property is available to accommodate growth. And of course, I'm limiting my discussion here to what we call New Lakeview, not the old Lakeview. This is an enviable position to be in as a cemetery, as more often than not, cemeteries are constrained by their land resources. The consideration of cremation rates, more in line with industry and society trends, reveals that there is no shortage of space to accommodate future burial needs. The issue today is in the narrow scope of product offerings at Lakeview. The extension of roadways to the north are designed to accommodate the comfortable carrying distance from the roadside to the location of the traditional committal service, or the graveside. But nevertheless, it generally follows the curvilinear road network established at Lakeview. As I said, in-ground cremation gardens can be accommodated within the periphery areas, and any future naturalized pathways adjacent to the property line. They can be developed in intervals with flush markers extending northward from the entrance drive to wrap around the property. We also talked about or identified the need for additional cremation products. This is represented in some cases by columbariums, such as the one we see in the bottom picture in the photo in the slide here. They can be accommodated within the peripheral areas themselves, again, in between the cremation gardens, or adjacent to any future pathways adjacent to the property line. They can also be integrated as a design feature within the existing burial gardens. An expansion of the existing mausoleum is recommended, or construction of a new one, based on the trends and data provided to accommodate current and future demand projections. Interior niches are recommended to be included in future phases and can also be provided in exterior court areas. The existing mausoleum extending out from the indoor cremation spaces and facing south, which have done very well at Lakeview. As well, we anticipate a need to expand the office area on the property southward. This would likely be required to accommodate additional staff on site for cemetery operations, and should council decide on investing on one of the recommended cemetery operational models that we'll present tonight. Finally, I should have mentioned this on the slide with the master plan. We are proposing that a nature trail pathway be incorporated along the boundary of the property, which would then provide additional burial opportunities and space to the public. These are features that are being developed with more frequency now on cemeteries as we move forward. Cosmo?
Thank you, Mike. So with this background information, we were able to provide some guidance for the development of Lakeview. And one of the key factors in this is the market and identifying your market. Interestingly, from data that we are able to receive from Lakeview, we see that Lakeview's capture rate is about 33% of dispositions within Thorold. 62% of those dispositions are Thorold residents, while 38% are non-residents. These numbers can grow. We believe these numbers can grow by developing a wider range of offerings, meaning developing a wider range of offerings at Lakeview and features to align with the market trends such as the growing preference toward cremation and including diversified memorialization opportunities and options, which include pathways, as Mike mentioned, and other naturalized environments of such. As well, this also leads into tariffs. We looked at the current tariffs at Lakeview, and we note that Lakeview's in almost all instances, they are lower than any of the municipal counterparts or in the private sector. For example, charges for traditional burial are approximately 42% lower than the average. So the tariff rates need to be updated. Clearly, this takes us to the next slide about how we do that. We're recommending a rate adjustment plan rather than to shock your patrons with a sudden change. We feel that we're recommending that the tariffs be brought in line in a gradual way with the other regional service providers and based on the comparable services. We also would recommend a period of time for that transition to take place, simply to allow your patrons and the community to adjust to the new rates, rather to have it a slow transition rather than a sharp immediate hike. And lastly, we get into access and security. One of the questions that were asked us for our review. We've noticed at Lakeview there isn't currently there doesn't appear to be any current issues with security. But public access is important, and security requirements are always should be looked at and provided in some kind of measure with the current situation. We do, although that's an insignificant issue currently, we do, however, recommend that some consultation with a security professional or at least the property insurer would be a prudent move.
So, Mr. Mayor, this brings us to our recommendations, and our report in the introduction section includes a list of 15 recommendations for the city to consider moving forward. Some of them may seem a little bit redundant, but as you read the report and go through the report, throughout the analysis, particularly in section 3 of the report, we've identified recommendations as the discussion unfolds, and these have been consolidated into the introduction section of the report. I would like to point out, though, and what we're talking about in the report, and we focus on, is the recommendation that the city look to adopt a specific business model to manage and operate Lakeview, the Lakeview Cemetery. And there are several models presented. The first model basically is status quo and nothing really changes, and you continue to operate as is. But that has obvious problems to doing so. The second is a model that would migrate the cemetery to what we call a net zero operational expense. And this model is intended to bring Lakeview to a financial equilibrium, where sales revenue offset operational expenses. This should be the base model that the city adopts as an intermediate step, if willing to later evolve the cemetery to a profit center. And so following on that model is model 3, which is actually to migrate the cemetery to a profit center. And this model focuses on extrapolating the net zero operating position with a program to generate profits, which can be reinvested into capital improvements and further enhancements of the cemetery products and service offerings considered relevant and comparable, if not superior, to the level of service found in the marketplace. So we believe it's very important that the city consider these models. There is a very good opportunity to adopt either one of these models and move to a situation where the cemetery becomes at the very least self-sufficient, and even better would be generating profits to fund its own internal growth for such things as mausoleums. Cosmo will just give a quick overview of the recommendations.
Thanks, Mike. As Mike mentioned, there's 15 recommendations in the report. I won't go into detail. I'll simply
can we
list them out. The details aren't important, of course. We're here for questions afterwards, but several lead to the other, starting with number one, the selection of a business model. And as Mike said, this will be an important first.
Mr. Casal, can we need to wrap this up. We're over the 10 minutes, so if you could wrap this up by maybe just doing a quick recommendation update.
Sure. So the 15 recommendations are before you: model selection, strategy, financial plan, public access to the services, update tariff rates, develop and implement a rate adjustment plan, site engineering review, human resource, that's your organizational chart, advisory board, possibly, bylaw review, technical audit, join the OACFP. That's a professional association. Choose a net zero model is our recommendation, at the very least. Develop a reform plan, and do your annual or periodic audits, which also include your financial reviews, but also security audits. And with that, wraps up our recommendations. And we would like to say that you have a beautiful property that uniquely represents Thorold in many ways, and we believe is worth further investment and development.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to open the floor for questions now to the presenters. Councillor Hanley, you're up first. You're muted, Councillor Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I just wish to ask in regards to the doing the recommendation, you're saying to go to scenario number 2. In regards to the office and branch manager, administrator, sales reps, etc., will they be looking to be in-house, or are we looking that we're going to need additional facilities built there? Is this going to be, are you looking at this being a facility that's managed off-site or on-site? Please and thank you.
Go ahead, Michael.
Yes, typically, through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Hanley, the personnel would be on-site, and therefore, in our report, we actually provide a couple of charts so that it would be a staged increase in staff associated more with the dispositions being, of course, burials. So right now, you're doing 108 dispositions. The first stage takes that from 100 dispositions to 250, and we tell you how many staff we think would be needed for that. And then the second stage would be from 250 up to 500 dispositions. So you can see that that is quite an increase in dispositions. It's not necessarily a huge increase in staff, but there is definitely a staff increase needed. And that's why we also mentioned that it may be, especially in the second stage, necessary to expand the admin center.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could have just one more question. In regards to, did I hear that right? You don't feel that there should be a chapel or a banquet hall located at the cemetery?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. Part of the exercise was to consult with the local funeral homes about the services offered. And of course, in those conversations, they're thinking about the services that they offer, because many have chapels not banquet facilities, but many have chapels. And in effect, what happens is that Lakeview would become, with a chapel, would be potentially a competitor to them, which may have an impact as to the business relationship. And quite frankly, they do a very good job at that. Chapels are more of a luxury item, if you will, on cemeteries. I don't know if Cosmo has anything further to say on that, but.
Thank you very much.
I think that covers it, except it's a matter of working with your partners, and the funeral homes are your partners. So it may be something to look at in future times when the development plans are implemented.
I like the business can't stop my day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor DeRose, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I know, I totally agree with what Michael just said. I would hate to have to compete with our local halls that cater to funerals after the fact, and also our churches. So I don't think it's necessary. The more we keep adding to this, the more the costs are going to be for burials, and I don't think it's fair. I understand we do have a lower average cost than other communities. Instead of looking at making that all up on the backs of Thorold citizens, I could see increasing the cost of people from out of town. And now with that, I just wanted to ask a question, Michael. If we do implement these 15 recommendations or suggestions, do you have a cost or a rough estimate? I know right now we're operating at a loss, but do you have any numbers that you can share with us, even if they're just projections, to implement the 15 recommendations? Thank you.
Right, through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor DeRose, no, we didn't cost out the recommendations. I mean, that can be done. The intent of the recommendations is to provide a picture, if you will, to the city as to the potential for Lakeview. I mean, you know, you can choose to implement some or not others, but the most important recommendation, perhaps, when you want to try to deal with the cost and the profitability of the cemetery, is the first thing is to decide which model you're going to migrate to. And if you decide to go to the net zero model, that doesn't mean you can't then go at a future date into a profit model. But, you know, keeping in mind that our analysis indicated that certainly the city is subsidizing the cemetery through its tax base, and moving towards a net zero would reduce that subsidy significantly, if not eliminate it. So, but it's going to take time. And, you know, these things will have to be looked at to cost it out, to put together a strategic plan, if you will, in terms of what's the process of implementing the various recommendations.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michael. And I will support a net zero, but a net zero situation. However, I don't think we're not a private industry, and I don't see profiting off people's despair and death. So yeah, getting it to a net zero would be great for taxpayers. I agree with that. But trying to make it into a profit, I don't think that's the avenue we should be taking down the road. That's just my opinion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor DeRose. Any further questions? I got Councillor Decker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Michael, I didn't notice in the plans under the amenities, I don't see anything for public restrooms. And I know that Lakeview is one of the only cemeteries that doesn't have public restrooms, whether we're having a funeral or if you're at the cemetery. And I think that's really important. So I did not notice that in the plan. And I agree that there should be personnel on site, even on the weekends when you're at the cemetery. So can you tell me, was that omitted? Did they not think that was a necessity at the cemetery, or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Decker. No, that actually was brought up, and I'm trying to recall now if it's actually in the report. You know, the report's 80 pages plus appendices. There's a lot in there, but definitely public restrooms are a necessity. Normally, if you're constructing a new mausoleum, you would have a facility in the mausoleum for any visitors there. So certainly there should be public restrooms available on the cemetery.
Okay, I just asked because I when you said amenities, I just assumed that was under that. And I know that there aren't any there at the moment, and I think that's very important there as well. And I think it's really important to have personnel there on site on the weekends as well. So thank you for your report. It was very detailed.
Thank you, Councillor Decker. Anyone else? Seeing none, Michael, and it's Cosmo? Is it Cosmo?
That's
Okay.
correct.
I want to thank you for your presentation and very detailed, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Mayor.
Thank you.
Members of council.
Up next, I have 14A, Don Doby is to present regarding the report. Is Don there? Hello, Don.
Hi, good evening, Mayor Ugolini and members of council. I am happy to have Larkin's presentation of their cemetery service delivery review before council tonight to be given the opportunity to speak. We all have a connection with our cemetery, a history. My personal connection is that I have 3 of 4 sets of great-grandparents, both sets of my grandparents, as well as aunts, uncles, and cousins buried in the ground, and my dad within the walls of the mausoleum. I grew up going there every Sunday to watch and help my parents tend the gardens of our departed loved ones. With tonight's presentation and the cemetery service delivery review in whole, we have been given the information to allow us the opportunity to have our cemetery self-sustaining, when I don't think any other amenities within our city does at this time. Not the arena, not the pool, or our sports parks. You have the opportunity to ensure that our cemetery is viable for many more years to come, while relieving some of the burden off the taxpayers. The cemetery may not be as fun or as exciting as other places that offer city services, but no less important. It truly is the city's hidden gem. My hope is that you will take the time to read the report in its entirety, and that the additional reports recommended within the Director of Operations report will be able to come to council in a timely manner for your consideration. I should also note for the record that I have been an employee with the City of Thorold for over 20 years, with the last 5 years working at the cemetery. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Thank you for your presentation, and now I'll open the floor for questions for Don. I have Councillor DeRose.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a statement. Thank you, Don. Well said. I agree. It's a special place, I think, for most Thorold residents. Having my family that are deceased all buried there, it is a special place, and it kind of, it often gets neglected, I think, because like you said, we always look at the shiny new things and the parks, the arenas, and I think this is an important, very important to my family also. Thanks for sharing, Don. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Councillor Decker, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Ugolini. Thank you, Don, for speaking. I totally echo your sentiments. Obviously, I have family there as well, and I do believe that that cemetery is important to Thorold, and it does hold a lot of personal memories there. And I do believe that it does require to have personnel there. You know, I've echoed that before, that during the weekend, on the weekend. So I would hate to see that taken away, you know, because you never know what could happen there. And even if you just want to go in and talk to somebody about something that's, you know, that you've noticed at the cemetery. So I just wanted to say thank you, and that I echo your sentiments as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nella. I just wanted to comment on to Nella too, that we do have one public washroom, and it is within the office, but it is only open to the public when the office is open at this time.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
Councillor Sentence.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Don. Thanks, Don, for your presentation. I agree with everything you're saying for the same reasons as you said, and the presenters before. It looks like something we can do going into the future. So thank you for coming, Don.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, Don, thank you for coming and presenting to council this evening.
Thank you.
So now we've got PWCS 2022-03 Cemetery Service Delivery Review. I need a mover and a seconder. And then I'll read the motion. I got Councillor Sentence, seconder Councillor Hanley. And the motion is that, one sec, I gotta mark this down. that the presentation on the cemetery service delivery review by Larkin and Plus Land Use Planners Incorporated be received for information, and that staff be directed to prepare additional reports outlining a recommendation for future services, budget, and schedule from the recommendations contained in the report. That is the motion on the floor. Is there anyone want to speak to that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, that is carried. Up next, consent reports. I have a mover, Councillor Decker, seconder, Councillor Wilson, that council approve items 15A to 15I as presented. Does anyone want to pull a report? Go ahead, Councillor Hanley.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull report CC 2022-02.
Okay. Anyone else? Go ahead, Councillor Longo.
Yes, I'd like to pull PDS 2022-02 residential rental licensing.
Okay. That is, what number was that again, Councillor Longo? Sorry.
PDS 2022-02.
There's actually 202s.
I know, that's why I was confused. And is there anyone else? Okay, so I got 15I and 15B. What one did Councillor, well, there's.
I think it's C, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, 15C.
Okay, so C and I. So we got a mover, Councillor Decker, and a seconder, Councillor Wilson, that council approve items 15A, 15B, 15D, 15E, 15F, 15G, and 15H. All those in favor? Opposed, that is carried. Okay, so up first, we had a request from Councillor Hanley to pull 15C, which is CC 2022-02, Councillor correspondence from January 18th, 2022 meeting, and I'll turn this over to our clerk, Joanne Hyde.
Sure. Through the mayor to members of council, the recommendation for this report is to receive the report for information.
Okay, now I'll turn the floor over to Councillor Hanley. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I wish to go in camera on this section, please. I have some items that I want to discuss, and it'll be in regards to an identifiable individual. And I believe it should be discussed in camera.
Through the mayor to members of council, I wouldn't be able to support that because we haven't provided notice to the public of the reason to go into session.
Mr. Mayor, that's a new one on to me. We've had this several times where an item has come up at council and a council member has asked that it be brought into special counsel. This is a first, Mr. Mayor. I've never heard of it ever. I've been on council for 20 years. Fred Sprowley can concur with me. Anytime that a councilor has asked for an item to go into camera, into the back room, it didn't need to be pre-discussed. It could actually be brought forward and that a vote would be taken by council. And if council does not want to go in camera, I will speak on it publicly. That's all I have to say, Mr. Mayor. I believe that there's items contained within the Osmondsman report dated November the 11th, 2021 that came to the attention of council that needs to be discussed in camera, Mr. Mayor. If we're going to be open and transparent and have accountability and integrity in this council, we need to apply the rules evenly always. You're delineating from the rules of this council from past.
Okay, if we go in to discuss that report.
Anytime it's been said that it deals with a piece of property or identify an individual, a request to go on camera, and all the years I've been in council, has been granted, and this has never come forward before in all my years. That's in all honesty, Mr. Mayor.
I'm not arguing that. Is that fine that we can go in to discuss that, identifiable individuals?
Through the mayor to members of council, if it's council's wish to go against the recommendation of the clerk, I fully support whatever council decides.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor, that's only a recommendation from the clerk. Remind you, that's not the policies or the procedures of council.
We'll have two motions. We'll have a motion to go against the recommendation of the clerk on that item, and so I need a mover and a seconder on that. I've got a mover, obviously Councillor Hanley, and a seconder, Councillor Wilson. Okay. All those, go ahead, Councillor Longo.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to clarify something. You just said that we're voting on a recommendation made by the clerk.
Well, the clerk...
We're voting on a request by a councillor.
Well, first of all, the clerk says something, then you want to not listen to that, we vote on that, and then we vote on the recommendation to go on.
No.
A recommendation comes forward in this
Mr. Mayor,
series
point of order. We do not vote on anything that the clerk says. The clerk doesn't tell us what to do, and we don't vote on her recommendation. We make a decision as councilors what we want to do, and Councillor Hanley asked to go in camera. I believe that's what we do at this point.
What's the procedure, and I'll ask the clerk.
Through the mayor to members of council, if you refer to the procedural bylaw, the procedural bylaw outlines the reasons to go into closed session, as well as providing notice to the public. At this point, my recommendation was to not proceed to go into closed session, as we have not been open and transparent to provide a reason to the public to go into closed session.
I'll give a reason, Mr. Mayor, if you want, if that's what needs to be had. I believe we need to go into camera, Mr. Mayor, because as we all know now through the correspondence in tonight's consent report, item number CC 2022-22, that the information supplied and comments made to council on November 16th, 2021, CC 2021-70, was in fact non-factual as the correspondence received by the Ombudsman's office. There isn't and never was there a formal investigation as the public and council were made to believe. Do I need to go on any further, Mr. Mayor? That's why we're going in camera here. Council,
okay,
what I just stated are the facts.
Councillor.
Through the mayor to members of council, the report actually states, I wrote that report, that a request was submitted, a complaint was submitted. Nowhere in the report did I ever indicate that there was an investigation.
Mr. Mayor, I have the floor. Mr. Mayor, I have the time limit right now. At the 1:50:03 period of the November 16 meeting, Councillor Longo asked the CAO a specific, very specific list of questions.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. Point of order.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Councillor Longo.
Go ahead, Councillor Longo.
And with all due respect, Councillor Hanley, I want to jump in before somebody gets themselves in trouble. I think we should go in camera to discuss this.
Thank you.
And I'm not going to sit here if we do it outside of camera. I don't think it's fair.
Thank you. And that's why I asked if, okay, so is that the way we do it? What I did, was that correct? First, we say that we're going to go in camera, and then
Through the mayor to members of council, then you would require a motion to move into camera.
okay. So I have a mover, Councillor Hanley, and a seconder, Councillor Wilson, and the motion is to move into camera to discuss the ombudsman's report. Am I correct when I say that? Is that what we're, okay? Is that good, Councillor Hanley?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay. Do we want to do that now or when we go in after?
Through the mayor to members of council, you've actually requested to go through that now, so we'd have to go into closed session now.
Okay. So we're going to, what are we going to do as far as Lincoln?
Mr. Mayor, can we not, I don't think any of us realize that, but can we not do a motion to add that to the closed session after we get through the agenda? Can we do a second motion?
No, wait, I just want direction from the clerk whether we have to go now or we can do it when we go in camera for the other in-camera item.
Through the mayor to members of council, we have actually passed the motion to move into camera now. And it was voted on.
I thought the motion was to move this item to closed session.
It was a motion to move into camera at 8:03.
That's not how I heard the motion.
Okay, 1 second, I'm just getting clarification.
No,
I
sorry.
would wish to,
Sorry, the deputy clerk was just saying that it would be a little bit difficult to move in and out.
So do we want to add it to the closed session? Do we need a motion for that?
You would technically be reconsidering the motion that you had just passed. So it might just be easier to go into closed session now to do it, because going through the reconsideration and it just might be
Can they
easier.
use the same link that they're going to use later?
Yes, I think the deputy clerk can provide the link originally to the closed session. We can go in and then come out.
Thank you. So we're going to go into closed session now. You have your link for closed session. Please go into that link, and then we will take care of that issue, and then we'll come out as closed session and then